It's so funny. A while ago, I thought you were talking about Gary at University of Arizona, him, because I did get studied as a research medium. In fact, I spent 4 days in a haunted house with a research team from University of Arizona being studied and all kinds of other experiments. But I tell you, I've gotten to be not just studied, but be able to join in just a small way with Victor and Wendy in making information available to people and getting the word out. And so I'm going to ask folks to share the Friday Afterlife report as much as you can and get that out there. I seldom does an interaction with a student or client go by that I'm not mentioning it in the Zoom groups. And now the Gary that we all love, I want to mention about all the love and all the work that he's done to help out with all of these. And I have to thank you, Wendy, for putting the latest episode of Sally and Gary's podcast, Soul Explorers, out there that I got to be on, and they just turned me loose. They let me talk about where I see our world going and where humanity is going and some of the opportunities and challenges that we have. So thanks for putting that in the report. And I hope that if you haven't watched that episode yet, that you will, and definitely, stay up with their podcast. I have a podcast too called Carefree and Conscious where I interview authors, and we really are trying so hard to make information available to people. Um, yes, we have to have a social media presence. I have to have a social media presence, and keeping my name out there, my face out there. Yes, I have a business. Yes, I have bills to pay and all of that. But more important is being open to new information and not forgetting the historical record that we have. We have over 200 years of afterlife research that we can look back on. And we need to understand that the belief that gives us great comfort, once it gets formed into an absolute knowing, then we can change the world. And that is that love and life live forever. You cannot possibly ever really die. And because of the fact that I've had so many people, like just an outpouring from, I think only maybe a few hundred people watched that latest podcast. I'm hearing more from that than the one that has 55,000 views on another podcast right now. And what people are asking me about is how does what's going on in our world, how does our ascension affect this? So you notice I'm not like telling you who I am or what I do, because I know, I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys can always go look at my website, carefreemedium.com. If you're just stumbling across this on YouTube, that's great. I got to get into the things I'm really excited about right now, which is this is an amazing time to be on planet Earth. And I want to tell you why. I'm going to tell you how you can be effective and really live your soul's purpose at this time on the earth from wherever you are. And I want this to be helpful, hopeful, and healing, the three H's, I call them, which Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, once said that if we are going to tune into the Akashic records, or we're going to give a reading, or we're going to share in spiritual information, let it be through the lens of being helpful, hopeful, and healing. That said, some of the things I say might scare you. And I'm here to tell you it's okay to be scared. It's okay, but we don't live in that space of scared. When we take our compassion and we transform it into action, you find that fear disappears. And also the fact that no matter what happens to you or has happened to you, you're safe at home 100% all the time. You're not all here, my friends, and that's a good thing. There's a part of us that is always at home in our natural frequency where we live. Now, I want us to start by telling you, I'll talk a little bit I want to take questions about this specific topic first for a while. And then, as Gary Langley said, open topic Q&A as well, because I know there can be things on people's minds that they want to discuss. But I want to tell you that while I'm talking to you, I want you to just do this thing for me. Just pretend, visualize, imagine, or know that there are doors that are now opening right in your heart, in their heart space, and out comes light. And you don't have to sit through the session and think, light, 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 I've got to get light going. But let that light flow, let that light go to all people and animals that are homeless, hungry, suffering, and suppressed. And know that we're all bathed in this light. And you can give it a color or colors if you like. And this is the space that we're going to sit in. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you found Wendy's channel in 2050, or whatever it's called now. You can do this now. And because this spiritual energy lives outside of space-time, time and space and place, it will work. You'll join with us. Let that light flow. If you want, you can visualize, imagine, or simply know that you can see people smiling as they're bathed in that light. And know that also that as you do this, we're all being bathed in the light, you too. Okay, so before we can talk about what are people meaning when they say the word ascension, and what are the does the times that we're in right now have to do with anything? And you've heard frequency, you've heard the term vibration. I want to first explain what that means. I used to think everybody knew what I mean by, raise your vibration. And I can remember when we first started doing the conferences over 10 years ago, we would just say, come to this event, you'll raise your vibration, you'll be with like-minded people. And the first edition of my book, I got a bunch of email from Susanne, people saying you never explained what that even means. And so when I did a second edition in 2018, I did explain. I think I did it in the foreword, if memory serves, I think. And so I want to go back to my grade school, my middle school science teacher, Mrs. Flanagan. And I'm going to give you this example. When we came into science class, and I love science class, we walked in one day and Mrs. Flanagan was at the front of the room, had a bowl of ice cubes, a beaker of water, and the Bunsen burner, which is like something that you can cook on, basically, like a little mini stovetop. She turned it on and she put the beaker of water onto the Bunsen burner. And as she was talking, she was teaching us about the frequency and the vibration of molecules, and that water in its natural state simply flows in its natural state. If you freeze it, she pointed at the ice cubes and said, you are slowing the vibration of the molecules of the water. The whole thing changes frequency. It becomes dense and heavy, and it's not going to be able to be poured. It's restricted in its movement. It's dense, heavy, it's stuck. And right about that time, the water that was on top of the Bunsen burner came to a boil, and steam was coming out. And she said, now what the heat has done, and the heat is a stressor, the heat has increased, sped up the vibration rate of the water molecules. Their frequency has changed, and by going faster, we say lifted, higher vibration, new frequency. Does anyone want to come up here and catch some of this steam and drink it? And of course, I'm pretty sure we all giggled. And what I took away from that years later was obvious. When we are stressed, the stressor we can choose to let our vibration rate rise if we want, but eventually it will anyway. And I'll get to that in a minute. And we can never be weighed down again when we become that steam, at least not for very long. But if we let things slow us down, meaning keep us in fear and anger, which are so closely related, we're like the ice cubes. We're dense and we're heavy and undrinkable. So over time, through years of experience and heartaches and losses and things like that, you will learn that there's sort of like a continuum of that experience. There is the grief, whether it's a person, a pet, a business, your mobility, your health, or anything that you have lost or that has suffered. There's a grief experience that we have on that continuum. And it's important to our vibration that we don't skip that grief. And the vibration needs to have the experience of that grief. We can't have it in our true home, in our spiritual world. We can have it here. And as we come through the grief, and remember, I'm not just talking about someone's physical death. As we come through that, then there's a synthesis, a period of time where we see how it has affected us on a spiritual, mental, emotional, and even physical level. And so we're seeing all the results. And then there's a processing. Like I recognize, I witness, I see what I have experienced, and I see the world now as it is and who I am now without that person, pet, situation, ability, whatever it is. And then there's an integration where I'm integrating what I've learned about myself and what I've learned about the world. And that becomes the wisdom. And so I think of that steam that could never be frozen again. And I'm sure if there are scientists here that you might say, oh, but there's a way to do it. And da, 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 da. Okay, I'm speaking metaphorically. Just bear with me. Once we have decided that we're going to be disciplined about working on our vibration rate, we can't be the frozen ice cubes for very long. But being in a dense state is a necessary part of experience all the way to the wisdom. And enter the discussion of ascension. There seems to be a couple different camps on this. And this was part and parcel with questions that I get where people say to me, there are people sharing that we're in an ascension process right now, and that everything we see going on in our world that is negative was done on purpose for us to help us ascend. And so don't fight it, just witness what everybody's going through and just sit back and be your spiritual self and just watch all the idiots have fits and react to everything. And I find that uncompassionate. And I'm speaking extremely, but I have heard people say, they're just a bunch of overreacting people, and let's just wait. We're moving into the 5D world, and they're not. Fortunately, there's a bigger camp of people saying, hey, this is our opportunity to figure out who we are as human beings and as individuals. If we don't like what we're seeing in the world, that we can monitor our thoughts, words, and actions for compassion towards ourselves and compassion to others. And so we have to remember that free will is always involved here. Free will is always involved in the choices that we make. However, contrast, you guys have heard about contrast is necessary for us to have these experiences. I don't have the conclusion that things are being done to us or for us, but that we are doing the doing. And I want to say that anyone who is thinking that a president or a prime minister or a dictator or a strongman or even the bully in their school or their workplace has all the power is missing the point. There are forces at work that are way beyond who people whom you can name. I've actually come up with a name years ago. I say the 1% of the 1%. There are those whose names we will never know, that not billionaires necessarily, but trillionaires, that are trying to divide us, because to divide us is to consolidate their power, is to consolidate their wealth. It is incumbent now for raising our own frequency and to be a good community member, to speak up for what you know to be compassionate. And what I've been seeing also from my guides, my team, the things that I read, the people I talk to, is that we're also getting, a lot of us, we're getting molecular upgrades or molecular rearrangements to our physical bodies while we're out on the astral or while we sleep, so that we can hold more light. So that those of us who intend to be good neighbors and intend to be compassionate, no matter how you vote or whatever, we can hold more light. And to me, that is ascension, is being more of the light, but also acting more within the light. Again, I come up with this 1% of the 1% because I don't want to say secret, evil, trillionaire cabal. It sounds crazy, but it is not. There is nothing a prime minister or dictator can do for very long that doesn't fit in with the strategies and objectives of those who want to consolidate power. And their biggest play in the playbook is to divide you and me from each other, is to make us think that a group of us is better than another. This is nothing new. I'll bet Neanderthals had something going on about who should sleep in the biggest cave, but we don't have to buy into it. We don't have to let ourselves hate. And when I think of ascension, I think of the fact that we came here on earth, we incarnated here to lift ourselves and lift each other up. And that doesn't mean that we have to step on someone else to do it. Now, I can get upset with who was president before and my country who is president now, but my form of protest is to not spend more than 1 minute on anything anybody said or proposed or whatever. What I do is, my protest is, instead of thinking negative thoughts about the people who agree with something I don't, or thinking negative thoughts about the prime minister or dictator who said that, I ask myself, where am I feeling this in my body now? And I send my attention to where that is. A lot of times it's my gut or my heart, my solar plexus or my heart energy center or chakra. And I just acknowledge it. And then I ask that energy within me, is there something that I can do where I am? And if I get like, yes, you can join this organization, you can get better informed or better read, or there's someone that you can help, great. If not, it's gone. You're not going to find me being worried about the 10 things that are the top of the news today, because there'll be potentially 12 new things tomorrow. And I see that as a form of protest. But I also know that wherever you're placed in your life, you're placed there because you are a light in that community. And you may feel like there's nothing can do. What can I do? You have to be you and look for the small interactions in life where you can help, whether it's helping a bird that's with a broken wing, or your neighbor's carrying some heavy boxes and you can carry, you have no problems, and you try to help them. You don't know if you have made their day in that moment, or if that opened a door so they can talk to you later when they really need help. And it is truly that simple because of the connection that we all have. And I know that all of you who are in the Zoom group understand that this is a unity consciousness that we're in. But there may be people who stumbled across this and decided to watch a section and are going, how can something we do for one person help all of humanity? It helps all of humanity because it puts us in a higher frequency. And in that higher frequency, it's hard to freeze us down into the cold hearted ice cube. You could argue also that I have to turn off the news because I don't want to be upset. And I would posit that in order to be a good world citizen, you need to have some idea of what's going on in the world. But yes, I agree with you. We don't have to have news on all the time. And I would also suggest going outside of your regular news sources. Use a virtual private network and log in as though you were from some different country. Pick one and see what their news feeds are saying. But know that the bottom line is we're in one of the most exciting times that have come along in decades. And those of you who are listening and feel like, but I didn't choose this, I feel powerless. You're not powerless. You're not powerless. The reason why these forces are trying so hard to make us divide against each other is because those forces know that we have the power, because the most powerful force in the world, in the universe, is love in action, in action. So you'll hear people say, I'm taking an Ascension course and I'm working on my Ascension. And I just caution people to use their discernment about, what that means, and look for the qualities of people who are talking about Ascension. Look for, their compassion in action, the helpful, hopeful, and the healing activities involved there. And it's not like we're going to get so great at keeping our frequency up that nothing can upset us again. Grief doesn't bother us. We can put it in a box and ignore it. No, please, please, please honor your grief, honor your losses, honor the sadness. Find where it is in the body, recognize where it is in the body, and ask yourself, what now? What next? Who's around me? Who can help? And it's important to not bypass those things with the things that happen to us that we perceive as negative or that are objectively scary or harsh or painful. Not to bypass those with, hey, it's all love and light, and not to judge others and judge ourselves. What did you do to attract this? I hear that sometimes, and nails and a chalkboard. I have to really keep myself in check. Ugh, don't judge yourself. Know that part of why we're here is having those experiences to go onto that continuum that takes us from the grief into the wisdom. But also know that there are there's quite possibly someone around you or who will be around you in the future that will benefit from your experience in some way. We are utilized also as teachers here on the earth. And sometimes that's being a good listener, being a good role model, volunteering, being at groups like this, having conversations. So an ascension process in my mind, my definition is exhibiting and exhibiting compassion for self and for others, and being disciplined in aligning our thoughts, words, and actions, and even inactions with compassion. And then we will hold more light. Now, there are also physical things that we can do, taking care of the physical body. Another thing I get asked about for my, and I'll stop calling it ascension now. I'll say for my vibration, do I need to be vegetarian or vegan? And my findings have been your body will tell you what it needs. Your body will tell you what it wants. And over time, you'll find perhaps that you need less meat, and that the fruits and the vegetables, because they hold more light, resonate more for you, or not. But your body will tell you what it needs, and it will tell you what it does not need. And then finally, let me say to you that although I feel that it is very important to recognize that there are no politicians really holding the true power, that we hold them accountable, that we don't just check out of the voting process, that we don't just assume our vote won't count or whatever. And I'm not saying this because of who is president now. I've always said this. Don't give up on your activities in the outside world because you feel like you don't have power. Over the last couple of days, you may not know this, but there are anti-fascism demonstrations going on by the thousands and the tens of thousands in the streets of several countries, several European countries. And I was in a few of them just last year in Slovakia, in Hungary, in Czechia. And they're coming out because they see freedoms being limited, they see hate being institutionalized, and they don't want that. And I don't tell you to go out and stand in the street and hold a sign, but rather to look around right where you are. Who can you love? Who can you support? How can you better have compassion for yourself as well? That is an ascension process right there. It's not it's not a blessing you can buy from a guru. Ascension. It's not a magic spell that you can get from a shamanistic teacher. Ascension. It is the sum total of who you are and how you express that to this three-dimensional world that we call Earth. And please know that self-judgment can keep you from that fullest expression of your light. I've had so many people say, I feel like I'm not doing a darn thing to help others. And this has gone on for 20 years. I've been hearing this. And what's my soul's purpose? Your purpose is not your job. Your job puts food on the table and gives you a roof over your head and takes care of your family. And maybe if you're lucky, it gives you some health insurance. In my country, you can still get a mountain of health related debt. I digress. Anyway, your soul's purpose is not your job, but at your job and through your job, you can find ways to be a comfort, a support, or to help people see things with more light. And in closing with this portion of today, I will just say that I do believe that you chose to be alive at this time. And if the thought comes up of, I can't take anymore, or um, I don't feel like there's anything I can do, just remember that in choosing to be here and in knowing that you are a forever being of light, you have signaled the universe, I am ready to let my light shine more brightly. When you wake up in the morning, you can ask, if you're so inclined, thank you for this day, divine source or source, God, whatever you believe, use me as your instrument. I'm honored to be of service. And you'll see that each day feels more like an accomplishment rather than sludging through. Again, love is the most powerful frequency in the universe. And when we decide to be united and we realize that we're not getting played against each other, there is literally nothing that we cannot do. And it may not happen overnight, but love will conquer. So I'd like to see if there's a couple questions that people have about ascension or frequency and vibration, if we could. And then just, maybe our last 15 or so, just have an open Q&A discussion, whatever you guys want to do there. And thank you.